Welcome everyone to session. I was calling them episodes, but I think it's more appropriate to call Monday Q&A the session. Maybe I'll go back and change that to session on the other ones. We'll see. But welcome to session 4 of Monday Q&A with Bro.Diallo. This is live weekly question session. Appreciate y'all. Let's fade out the music and get started. I'm sorry I wasn't here. I missed 2 Mondays in a row because I was traveling. I was in St. Louis and in Missouri. So, and I wanted to do, actually, I was going to try to do the Monday Q&A on driving back from St. Louis to Chicago. But my wife was like, I'll be damned if you're trying to talk to people on the damn internet while you're driving. So the kibosh was put on that, which I think was the best thing because I didn't want to go viral for the wrong reasons. But anyway, I'm ready for y'all questions. If y'all ready for my answers or my attempt at answers, and if I can't answer your question, I will either try to give you a reference to where you can find an answer, or if you hit me back on the next week, I will spend the week trying to find the answer. All right, so what you got? Any questions? Because I know y'all don't want me to talk about what's on my mind, you know. Because one thing with Trump, gosh, Trump is such an idiot, you know. But I'm gonna let y'all guide the discussion. What's up from Fort Lauderdale? Cooper and Peoples, what's up, man? Glad you're here. Any questions? Oh, okay. Where are we at? Oh my goodness, that's long. So Tim asked, can we discuss how dangerous to our communities many of these manipulative cult leaders, Jonestown, Nuwapians? Yes. The thing with cult leaders who are very dangerous, even there's no such thing as a good cult, because cults by definition and by inherent structure are exploitative. So even if the cult leader has a good intention, it has never come out positive for the followers of the cult. The reason why Black people are so susceptible to cults is when you don't have real world material power, when you lack any real world material agency, is the more technical term for it, having agency, you're very susceptible to otherworldly forces. So if Black men and women don't spend their days governing resources, determining how to extract resources, how to lay out their cities or their communities, determining trade and other interactions, if we're not being creative forces. And going to do a job is another thing, you know, is something different. But if your entire life has been laid out before you and your entire life has been dictated to you, what's appropriate, not only do you need to go to school, but what you need to learn, how you will earn a living, everything is outside yourself, and you don't feel that you have any agency. A lot of people in those conditions tend to live in fantasy worlds. They like to imagine they either had former greatness or they will have future greatness, or that they are currently great, but their greatness hasn't manifest because of some forces beyond them is preventing them from being great. So these are the type of psychological conditions and material conditions that make Black people vulnerable to cults. And when Black people become vulnerable to cults, they become less attached to real world. They have less of a real world analysis of why they're suffering, and they have no chance of developing real world solution to their suffering, individual, personal, or collective problems. So we're vulnerable to cults. Cults are not based in reality. And the reason why a lot of so-called leaders form cults instead of real organizations is because cults alleviate you from accountability. So you can be a failed cult leader and get the love of your people. Take Farrakhan, for instance. If Farrakhan was over, it says I'm trying to reconnect. If Farrakhan was the leader of a political organization as opposed to a religious cult, he would have long been invalidated. You know, because if you look at the basic charter, how he's gone against, whether his work with Sun Young Moon. You can look this up. Go Google Farrakhan Million Family March Sun Young Moon. You can go look at his work with the Saudi. You can go look at his linking with the L. Ron Hubbard. He would have long been invalidated. If he was a CEO, he would have been ousted a long time ago because he's not moving the organization or the body that he's leading in the stated directions. So cult leaders form cults is because it's a more secure position to be. And cult followers follow cults because the false security as well. So the only way Black people can become less vulnerable to cults or make these popular cults and cults of personality. Because a lot of times you don't have formal cults like the Nation of Islam or the Nuwapians. You don't have formal cults. You'll have a cult of personality, a very charismatic and popular individual who doesn't have a formal organization, but people follow him and give them money. Demagoguery is what that's called. Umar, or you have secular cults like the Black Straight Pride movement, where they're not really a rational base, but the members are very fervent. So just because somebody isn't in your face looking like a Power Ranger talking about they're a Black Hebrew, not mean they are not either in a cult or susceptible to cult. And the only way we're going to get rid our community of cults or reduce the influence and power of cults over our people is to give our people real world material power, agency, and analysis. So scholarship and real world application of scholarship is the way Black people can overcome our vulnerability to cults. Let's move on to the next. I don't consider the church a cult. The church is an institution. The difference between a church and a cult is basically the body count. Because Cooper asked, do I consider the church a cult? Some church that go off of the mainstream institution, like Islam is a religion. The Nation of Islam is a cult. But the reason why I don't think that cults, church religions are more legitimate or any better than cults. In fact, religions are the main. Let me just try to sum this up. The main difference between a religion and a cult is if it has institutional standing and influence. Why don't you use my normal? Thank you. Thank you. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. All right, appreciate you. Anyway, so I think that cults, a religion, I don't consider them cults, but I don't have a higher opinion of religions. I don't have a higher opinion of religions. And a lot of religions, like Christianity, started off as a cult. Islam started off as a cult until it was able to displace the other institutional religion. Like Mormonism is in transition from a cult to a religion. And we almost had a Mormon president, and the Mormons run the state of Utah and the Southwest. So Norman, if you look at the most recent cult that has evolved into a legitimate state religion or institutional religion is Mormonism, Jehovah Witnesses, they're another one. So you can turn your cult into a religion if you emerge from the fringe and have state and institutional power. Okay, let's move on to the next. My man Mark, what's up, man? How you doing over there? Bolsonaro in Brazil. Brazil is all fucked up in the game, man. I feel really bad for Brazil. And something I was always thinking with this DOS nonsense, descendants of slave, which is another secular political cult that is emerging here in the United States. Brazilians are descendants of slaves. Jamaicans are Trinidadians, Ghanaians. Every Black person in the so-called New World would fit the classification. I got to stop bumping this desk. Would fit the classification as descendant of slave. But I think Bolsonaro is a nightmare. But it's consistent. Lenin and many other capitalist and communist theoreticians had understood that capitalism without any counterbalances will always lead to fascism and warfare. So I think Bolsonaro is he's not the disease. He's a symptom of the disease. You'll see all over the capitalist world, which is the entire world at this point, since they overthrew the Soviet Union and its satellite nations, is going fascist. And remember, Bush told us that after the fall of communism, there would be peace. The first Bush's daddy. And we were told for years that communism was the cause of war and strife, and the United States said it was attacking the third world because of communism to defend freedom. And once communism was defeated, we'd have peace and freedom and prosperity for all. Now that is the biggest lie that has been exposed, because now with the defeat of communism across the globe and the triumph of capitalism, you have more war, more poverty, and let more instability than any other time. So Brazil is falling under austerity. And one thing about Brazil, the Brazilian left, they actually had 5 consecutive progressive or leftist administrations in Brazil. And the progressives, this is something, ain't no such thing as halfway crooks. There's also no such thing as halfway revolutionaries, because they tried to play footsies with free market capitalism. They tried to play footsie with neoliberalism. If the liberals come to power and they don't go all the way left, they always fall back to the right. The same thing with Obama. So, and another thing, the most popular political leader in Brazil right now, Lulu, he's in prison. He was falsely imprisoned in a trumped up scam. So that was he's a Bolsonaro, here, Bolsonaro. He's not even a legit. He stole his election just like Trump got in on some dirty tricks. They all get in on dirty tricks. And no, I'm not talking about the Russians switching votes. There are other dirty tricks. In fact, the conservatives, the best thing that could happen for the conservatives is for the Democrats to focus on Russia, and therefore, instead of focusing in on the real reasons why Trump is an illegitimate president. So yeah, I think it's something bad. Hopefully, that it will revolutionize, take since the liberals have lost legitimacy and the fascists have come to power. Hopefully, the majority native African population of Brazil will become revolutionary. Because you kept having this halfway leftism and full on right wing oppression. So let's see if the left was willing to become extremists. Next question on YouTube. Speaking of war, without saying too much, do you think Africans going to war with like Haiti against the cave people, would it possibility of Africans to win against the so-called powerful US? Yes, Africa. Africa as a continent and African nations could totally defeat the United States. But they would have to do it through asymmetrical warfare and guerrilla warfare. It's totally possible. As Del Jones said, 90% of war is culture. If you can protect your culture from being compromised and penetrated by the enemy, you're almost undefeatable. If you don't believe me, look at Afghanistan. Afghanistan has fought the U.S. to a standstill, and the U.S. is losing ground. Afghanistan literally had a 16th to 15th century infrastructure. They had no advanced nothing. No satellites in the sky. Afghanistan did not have a satellite. The United States has been trying to subdue Afghanistan for 15 years. And they're losing. Right now in the United States, those imperialist fighters in the U.S. armed forces come back to the United States and commit suicide to the tune of 20 veterans and active duty soldiers a day from the psychological scars that they. So it's been proven. I don't know how many more times we have to have it demonstrated to us that the United States, just like the Roman Empire, the most powerful weapon it has is propaganda. Our idea is that it's an undefeatable force. So it's not about your enemy doesn't determine whether you'll win. It's your own internal fortitude. So if Africa became revolutionized, they wouldn't stand a chance. And every time Africa did become revolutionized, either regionally or locally, they have always had to sit at the negotiation tables. But the thing we also fail to accept about Europeans, the oppressors, is if they lose the war, they often go to work on winning the peace. So a lot of times we win the war and lose the peace. But yeah, it's very powerful. The United States is only as powerful as the rest of the world believes it to be. Just like U.S. power is just like U.S. currency. And yeah, they have the capacity to kill civilians, unarmed civilians, women and children, but that's not what wins you wars. It's taking and holding territory and subjugating the fighters, which they've never demonstrated the capacity to do. Okay, let's see. Move on to the next question. What's your analysis of Huey P. Newton's intercommunalism? Man, intercommunalism. Huey P. Newton basically stated that there's no real nation in the world. Capitalism doesn't respect borders. There's no real sovereignty, and he said it. He kind of came to this conclusion before even the great John Henry Clark. And we have to remember, Huey P. Newton is Dr. Huey P. Newton. He is a scholar. And he stated that, nations only essentially have flag independence. But he basically, in a tight summary, Huey P. Newton theorized that with the way that capitalism was structured, extracting people's resources, disregarding their sovereignty and their own power, that it forces people to get into these basically communal groups for to necessitate survival. And basically intercommunalism is a way for people to operate when the state and the economic structure and the state is not formed to serve their interests. The theory is with the social contract is that the people, we obey the laws of the government so that the government will service us. So we allow the government to exist, and we allow the government to hold powers of taxation, policing, regulation in exchange for the government representing our collective interest. But if the government fails to do that, then we have no obligation to the state if the state doesn't fulfill its obligation to us. But because the capitalist state not only doesn't fulfill its obligation to the people, but it also has the weapons and the will to kill the people cannot cancel the contract. So, in a means of adaptation, the people start to work together outside of the state or independent of the state. And Huey P. Newton felt that this independent underground economy or non-mainstream culture could be revolutionized to help people survive capitalism or even form a front against capitalism. But I had stated earlier that B.F. Skinner, Beyond Freedom and Dignity, and Edward Bernays were able to defeat and Huey P. Newton theorized that this would be an evolution from reactionary intercommunalism to revolutionary intercommunalism, and he felt that it was a natural flow from being under a capitalist or colonial regime. You would naturally begin to interact in an intercommunal or intertribal way. But the problem with that is the propaganda apparatus, the weaponized propaganda of the capitalists, created in the minds of the masses of the people, of the oppressed people, this concept of individualism and materialism. And I could one day, if I hustle harder than you, if I study harder than you, if I grind harder than you, that I could get up there with the oppressors. In the time of formulation, the early stages of slavery and communalism, there was really no real hierarchy. You can go from a house slave, from a field slave, but you were going to die a slave. And Marx, Huey P. Newton, and many other people, and even today, the reality is 90% of the people, where the class you're born in is the class you'll die in. But in this stage, they've been able to inculcate us in the idea that, yes, the cult of self, that we can transcend our color, we can transcend our status, we can transcend our history, and put on a MAGA cap and be Superman. So with that pathological mind state, that mental mind state, it makes it very hard for Black people to even engage in reactionary intercommunalism, uh, let alone revolutionary intercommunalism. Because when I grew up in East Hills Village projects, a low-income housing project, I remember going door to door. People coming to our door and ask, can we borrow 2 eggs? You know you ain't borrowing no damn eggs. Those eggs will never come back. And I remember grandma saying, oh, I need to make my morning coffee. Go to Miss Harris' house and borrow some sugar. And whenever somebody came and knocking at your door, you had it, you would give it. And if you had it, you give it not because you wanted to make money, because you thought it would profit you or allow you to lord over the next person. If you had it, you gave it because you knew one day you were going to be at the door. And they send the kids, and sometimes we'd be embarrassed, and sometimes the kid would snicker, but then in all, we had reactionary intercommunalism. But now I don't know children today. I've never sent middle class and even middle class, but I don't see amongst the poor that type of cooperation, you know. So B.F. Skinner said, give us the illusion of freedom, give us the illusion of dignity, and give us the illusion that we can ascend and transcend our state. And I tell people all the time, you do better to work to elevate your race and class as opposed to elevate as an individual, because you're more likely to die within the class strata that you were born into. So you best move that rung up the ladder as opposed to just trying to step up on that rung to get over the ladder. It's more practical, and historically, it's proven to be more effective. So I think that intercommunalism is it's an interesting concept, but I think until the conscious community, until the Black revolutionaries are able to subvert menticide and the individualism and the new spirit of age, get wealth, obtain wealth, forgetting all but self, until we get beyond the damage of that social conditioning, I don't think that it'll be a viable outcome. Revolutionary intercommunalism will be viable. What's up, Dawood? Okay, Rifa asks, can I be in a real organization working to control resources for Black people and still dress like a Power Ranger? You could. I don't know why you would, but I mean, Garvey used to play dress up. Let's keep it real. I love Garvey. Marcus Mosiah Garvey, but Garvey used to wear the epaulettes and the admiral cap and medals and stuff, and he was actually mocked by W.E.B. Du Bois. Said he looked like a clown. So yes, you actually can dress up in ceremonial or grand clothing, as long as your ideology and your application of your ideology is on point. Hey, dress how you want. You could walk around here looking like the Migos for all I care, in silk and go. You know, Khalid Muhammad used to drive a Rolls Royce around Harlem. So it ain't really no dress code to revolution, but like I said, if that's your thing, Reaper, yeah. So my issue, I like to mock the Hebrews. The I call them the Yahweh Rangers because of how they look, but really it's their ideology that's problematic more so than how they dress. What are my thoughts on Sean King? What I can say about Sean King, I think his journalism, it's some good and consistent journalism. I don't really know what he advocates for. I think he's a reformist and integrationist, and I can't get with them actions. But I think if you were going to Sean King for updates on, I mean, he's really good, and he has the resources and the formal training to keep you abreast on the stuff. But beyond that, beyond being a journalist to present us some stories and keep the information flowing, yeah, and he's an integrationist. So eat the meat, spit out the gristle. I sometimes read his articles, and he's a pretty tenacious journalist. That's probably the best thing I could say about him. He's a consistent and tenacious journalist, but I don't see him as being a leader or giving good insights in terms of how we should deal with the atrocities that he reports on. Glenn Ford, man, don't make me revisit Glenn Ford. I did almost a whole show on Glenn Ford. Basically, Glenn Ford, I think he's a little jaded. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna have to get off camera for a second. I'm back. I had to take my thing out for the thing so I could get my little sip on. All right, we talking about Glenn Ford. Glenn Ford, in case you don't know, he's another journalist, reporter, DJ. He runs a site called Black Agenda Report, and I recommend everybody, as often as you can, go to Black Agenda Report. Some good insights there. But he was one of the first public figures to come out consistently criticizing and condemning Obama. And he said he knew he was up on Obama well when Obama was a state senator, let alone president. And he was ostracized. And they started the Back is Black Coalition. And the Back is Black Coalition was basically Obama was seen as the leader of the left, the progressive leader, the Black leader, the one who had inherited the baton from the civil rights movement, and he's advancing us. And he's like, that's a corruption of our struggle. That's a corruption of our history. That's a corruption of our movement. So they started the Black is Black Coalition in order to say, no, this is what real progressive Black politics are. This is what Black consciousness is. This is the true legacy of the civil rights and Black power struggle, and Obama ain't it. And he was vilified. He was persona non grata. A lot of people started hating on him. And this is when a lot of revolutionaries like Leonard Jeffries endorsed Obama. The National Black United Front, Dr. Comrade Warrior endorsed Obama. Farrakhan endorsed Obama. So y'all, it's easy to shit on Obama right now. But in 2006, 2007, 2008, to call out Obama, you could be working in the community for 20, 30 years, and you call out Obama, and all of a sudden, nobody, the same people you've been organizing with for decades, want nothing to do with you. So anyway, up till today, now he's to me, he toys around with he denounces the Russia probe and said that that's nonsense. But then he also has people on his show. I don't remember the dude's name. That's basically pro-Trump. I mean, I think the brother was so hardcore anti-Obama, which I supported, which I shared, which I endorsed his anti-Obama stance. I supported the Black is Black coalition. But he's so, sometimes y'all swing so hard away from Obama, y'all fall into the laps of the Republican. So he has a lot of, to me, his critique of Trump's corruption, Trump's illegitimacy isn't as hard as it should be, given that Trump is so anti-Obama. I think that he thinks there's some type of kinship that could be found in their shared anti-Obamaness. And he has people that come on and make claims about Trump or Trump's agenda or the Trump administration that I don't think he challenges aggressive enough. So he ain't MAGA. He ain't a Trump supporter, but he's somewhat of a Trump sympathizer in some of his reporting on the issues surrounding Trump, especially the Russia probe and Trump's overall legitimacy as a president. So I think, hopefully, but I did, you can go, sure, my site isn't up. I'm having some economic and technical issues with my site. When my site goes up, I'll reshare that. I did a really in-depth, and Brother Adolfo called in, and we had a good conversation on that. Bomani asks, what does a 2018 Black revolutionary look like in practice? The first thing a Black revolutionary, especially in 2018, is at this stage of revolution, you have to be an advocate. You have to be an advocate for truth and challenge untruths. You have to, the lowest level of revolution is advocacy for revolution. Getting out here saying revolution is necessary, it's legitimate, it's possible, it's feasible. Here is the scholarship, here's the evidence, here is the research, here is the history. So you got to communicate and articulate. You got to work aggressively and hard to you have to work aggressively and hard to advocate and legitimize revolution and bring revolutionary awareness in the Black community. You also have to work to put revolution in the air. That's what they would say in the 60s. There was revolution in the air. You could feel there was some spark, some tension in the air, that something got to give and something was about to happen. So you become an advocate. Once you start to publicly advocate, you will be able to find who's receptive to your message as a Black revolutionary in 2018. When you find people that are receptive to the ideas and willing to put their time, talent, and resources up to make those concepts, to make them a material reality, locally, regionally, nationally, globally, then you assess what you have amongst yourself. This brother got a plot of land. This brother has some type of technical skill. This sister knows herbs. Then you start to formulate formations and programs based on the available resources. And your programs that you develop based on your available resources have to be structured in such a way that they delegitimize and subvert the dominant paradigm. So you growing organic, non-GMO food locally to subvert the industrial food system, and you begin to expand on that and institutionalize that. When you're doing herbal medicine, you begin to do that herbal and natural treatment, and you start to create a cooperative enterprise. You grow the herbs, you process the herbs in the community, you distribute them through the community, you educate the community in order to subvert the dominant medical industry. Same thing with any other economic formation. You do it socially, you do it communally, in order to show people that you can form a business that's not oriented towards profit, but oriented towards service, to subvert the profit-driven case. And then you just begin to extend those tentacles. But it has to be done with extreme aggression. And at the entire time you're doing your revolutionary organizing, you have to anticipate subversion, infiltration. So you're also building up the protocols and mechanisms to prevent infiltration and subversion. You know, that's a lot. That's a pretty heavy question, but that's basically the skeletal overview of how to be a revolutionary in 2018. Does socialist automatically equal being a Marxist? No. Being a socialist does not make you a Marxist because socialism predates Marxism. You are a Marxist if you are a socialist who adheres to dialectical and historical materialism. That's what Marx contributed to socialism. But Marx was operating in industrial setting, whereas you had agrarian socialism or primitive socialism, industrial socialism, modern socialism. Socialism predates Marx, and it's bigger than Marx. But I think Marxist analysis, Marxist research, Marxist critique is very valuable, and you can utilize that. But you don't necessarily have to be a Marxist. And in actuality, if you look at Marx's life and you read the Communist Manifesto versus looking at the Soviet Union or Maoist communist China, you'll kind of see that Marx wouldn't even be identified as a Marxist nowadays. So I mean, it's kind of like if Elijah Muhammad came back from his mothership in the upper orbit, as they tell us he's still alive in the orbit, waiting for the right time to return. If he came back, he wouldn't recognize the modern Nation of Islam. So you can be a socialist without being a Marxist. In fact, one of the most biggest proponents of scientific socialism, Kwame Ture, said, I am not a Marxist, I'm an Nkrumahist, because his foundation for socialism was based on the research and work of Kwame Nkrumah. He said, I'm a Toureist, because his research came from Sekou Toure's application and building of socialism in Guinea. So you can be a Toureist socialist, you can be an Nkrumah, you can be a eco-socialist. You know, a revolutionary. I'm a revolutionary Pan-Africanist socialist. I'm not a Marxist socialist. I mean, and if I had to remove it from any specific culture, I would say I'm an eco-socialist, because Marx, in terms of ecology, was not very strong. So the answer to that question, Chile, is no. You can be a socialist without being a Marxist, but you can't be a Marxist without being a socialist, because socialism encompasses Marx. Marxism doesn't encompass socialism. Okay, Derek. The right is consolidating their power across the globe. How will our small, low capital enterprises going to compete with big capital? We don't compete. We're working to subvert big capital. We're not working to compete with big capital. It's a difference. We're not trying to get we're not trying to outdo Amazon in online sales. What we're trying to do is construct a humane social relations and institutionalize those humane social relations. And the right is not consolidating. Believe you me, they're going to be shooting and killing each other, because you got the right Zionist Jews are right wing and the Nazis are right wing. And we just had a right wing Nazi go and kill a bunch of Jews, you know. And then Trump, who's the leader of the neo-Nazi, has a daughter who has converted to Judaism. And then you have the evangelical religious far right, and then you have the corporate far right. Don't get it twisted. They are emerging in power, but they're not unified. They have a lot of conflicts, and what those in power like to do is to divide and conquer us. Man, my eyes look dark. I don't know. Y'all just have to bear with me on this lighting situation. Is they amongst black nationalists, there's all kind of black nationalists, and our enemies and oppressors will identify the chinks in our armor or our internal divisions and stick a wedge in there and widen it up. But we look at white as just one big ball of whiteness. Didn't you see the McGregor fight? Conor McGregor and that other Caucasoid dude? He was Irish and another dude was Russian, and they was beating each other. And after he beat him up, he jumped over the thing. And those dudes are both white racist, and they hate each other. There's no unity. There's no consolidation. They're emerging in power, but they're not consolidating amongst each other. You know, so we have to fight their power, but we don't need to have the illusion that they're all together. They all speak or move with one voice. Chile said Chinwezu called Nkrumah a failure. My issue with calling someone a failure is you can't call someone a failure if they were subverted, if they were ousted from power. Now, Obama was a failure because Obama was able to rule his full terms. He was able to govern his administration without any extra legal or outside overthrow. Obama didn't deal with a coup d'etat. Obama didn't deal with foreign infiltration of his administration. So Nkrumah was toppled. Noam Chomsky said these nations in Africa and Asia and the Caribbean and Latin America can't be called failed states because they were toppled. He said the only real truly failed state that we see in the world is the United States because it was given every opportunity to do its thing and it failed. So I think that Chinwezu is out of pocket for that. I don't agree that he was. Nkrumah made some mistakes, but I believe that if Nkrumah or even Idi Amin or what's the brother Patrice Lumumba, Fred Hampton, if they hadn't subverted, kill off our leaders, then we could step back and say, well, Garvey wasn't a failure. He was infiltrated, he was framed, and he was ousted. So I don't like that context of calling our assassinated. In fact, the white man doesn't assassinate failed leaders. The white man doesn't overthrow or foment coup d'etats of failed leaders. The only thing that will cause the white man to move on you is if you're succeeding. Malcolm X ran around the world calling the white man the devil for over a decade. Said the white man's the devil, the white man's the devil. And I dare you to put your hands on me. They didn't move on him. But when he said, forget this religious stuff, I'm a secular leader, I will have a secular organization, and it's going to be a pan-African secular organization. Oh, he's a threat. Boom. He didn't fail. So the CIA wouldn't have overthrown Nkrumah if Nkrumah was a failure. They wouldn't have overthrown Lumumba if Lumumba was a failure. They wouldn't have let Mandela come to power if Mandela was a failure. Obama's a failure. Thurgood Marshall was a Thurgood Marshall. Thurgood Marshall was a failure. We got it all twisted. We got shit backwards. Chinwezu, I can't rock with him on that one. I haven't seen the Black Klansman movie. If it pops up free on the internet or something, I can watch it and let y'all know. But it seems like some bullshit. I agree with what Boots Riley said about Black Klansmen. It's glorifying the police in a time when we should be, organizing against the police. It makes a black cop the hero, even though we got reports after reports. Every time they do any research, they find that black cops are no less aggressive and brutal and murderous towards blacks than their white counterparts. Steve Coakley said that we can't trust black oath takers, that black people that are in positions where they have to raise their right hand and take an oath, whether that's medical profession, legal profession, or government position, they always represent and hold tighter to their loyalty to their oath than they do to their race and their community. So I ain't trying to hear no story about a heroic black man or that's a cop. But I ain't seen the movie. I ain't seen the Spike Lee movie since She's Gotta Have It. I saw School Days, but I ain't been rocking with Spook Lee for a minute. But if I see it, Chili, I'll let you know. Let's go to Facebook because I feel like it's good to hear from you too, Mark, man. Keep in touch. All right, it's right, consolidating power. Is capitalism a political ploy? No, capitalism is not a political ploy. Capitalism is a methodology. Capitalism is a means and method for extracting wealth and concentrating it amongst the capitalists, who are always a severe minority. It's not a ploy, it's not a game, it's a system. You know, capitalism seeks to commodify everything, commodify labor, commodify trees, commodify the oil, commodify the ocean and all things in the ocean, commodify sex, commodify child rearing, commodify courtship, and turning into a revenue generating commodity. And then you take all that revenue and wealth that's generated and you concentrate it into the hands of the few, who are the capitalists. It is a way to legitimize rape and theft, but it's not a political ploy. You can have capitalism in any type of political environment. You got capitalism operating under monarchies. You got capitalism operating under democracies. You got capitalism operating under fascist regimes. You got capitalism authoritarian regimes. So it's not really a political thing. You know, capitalism can adapt to many types of political systems. Capitalism don't give a damn about your politics as long as the money flow. You can say have your little African democracy if you don't get in the way with the money. But if you say, well, in our African democracy, I'm going to nationalize our resources for the benefit of the people, then they're going to overthrow your ass. But Jamaica has elections and has political democracy, but it, so no, capitalism is not a political ploy. I wish that's all it was. Capitalism and communism. Communism is a means of implementing socialism. It's a particular technique or structure of socialism. So they are interrelated. You can be a socialist without being a communist, but you can't be a communist without being a socialist. A lot of times we take European or white people's attempts to formalize socialism that fits their culture, their ceiling, and we think that's what it is. This is how you do it. The way white folks do it is the way the world do it. They're mankind. But no. What do I think of Eric Reid's comments regarding Malcolm Jenkins selling out the NFL player protest for money of his organization? I'd have to look that shit up. Who the hell is Eric Reid? Who the hell is Malcolm Jenkins? I don't follow sports, man. These ball chasers, man, I don't know why they got so much prominence. I'm currently reading with the study group, the $40 million slave. I was just had the copy. I was just looking at it. I think it's in my bag. But Buckeye fan 05, I had to get back to you on that. Let me take a note. Eric Reid and Malcolm Jenkins NFL protest. I'll get back to you on that because I mean, most of y'all boycotts are real easy to me because by the time the black community is boycotting shit, more likely than not, I ain't been fucking with that shit for years. I tell you, I'm a hater manipulator. I'm the hater. I am the prophetic hater. I be hating on shit long before the rest of the hood gets on to hating on it. So, but I'll get back to you on that. Sports questions, that's a hit or miss with Bro.Diallo because I don't follow sports. What do you think about Venezuela dropping U.S. dollar and the effects they had on the world economy? I weep for Venezuela. I was a supporter and I closely followed the Bolivarian Revolution, what I think is the biochemical attack and assassination of Hugo Chavez. What we're seeing in Venezuela is a textbook application of economic hitman. I was looking. I got a bookshelf over here. I was wondering if my copy of Economic Hitman, Confessions of an Economic Hitman. I think that Venezuela, one thing they did, they had a lot of allies. Remember that there was a leftist revolution throughout South America. In fact, almost every South American country, excluding Guyana and Colombia, had a leftist or progressive leadership, and they were integrating with Cuba. And remember, you had the BRICS nation, uh, Brazil, Russia, India, and China, and they were offering a finance, alternative technology and financing support. So I think it was wise what Venezuela did. But I think at this point, Maduro needs to prepare for an invasion proxy war. I think the U.S. will pay the Colombians to invade or some other proxy nation to go in and invade to restore order. Um, but I think them dropping the dollar or trying to, I don't think it had much of an impact because the United States is an empire that has created a lot of redundancy, meaning that if it's sourcing something from one place, it makes sure it has several other places where it can source the same thing. That way, if they have to impose an embargo against a nation to punish that nation, then they can extract resources from other places. So I don't think I'm trying to stop bumping. I don't know why there's so much shaking. I think that should stop shaking. Oh, I don't think it had much of an impact on on the world economy as we would like to imagine. I think that Venezuela should have done this in a wider scale. It should have been a multi-nation act as opposed to a unilateral act. And I hope that the Bolivarian Revolution will survive this onslaught that it's under. And one thing we have to remember that Obama was the real uh, criminal here. In a just world, Obama should be before an international court, facing human rights and war crimes charges. Okay, Carl, what's up, man? You often say that the life sustaining capacity of the Earth is being destroyed. There have been 5 mass extinctions in the Earth's history. Do you think life will survive and thrive even if humanity goes extinct? I think depends on when humanity goes extinct. If humanity goes extinct prior to, because this world could end up like Venus, it could be a lifeless rock floating in space. Um, Depending on how global warming plays out, whether or not they're able to, or we are able to reduce carbon emissions and engage in aggressive carbon sequestration, rewilding, reforestation. So human life would definitely thrive without humans. In fact, life on this planet was much more abundant and without prior to human white people. I ain't saying human. What I'm talking about? You got me on some human stuff. Without white people, shoot, life would be better and more abundant before European and the European mindset and European economic practices and ecological practices came about. Let's keep it real. This ain't a mankind issue. You could go look at China. You could go look at Africa. You could go look at South America. You could go look at Australia. You could go look at the Pacific Islands. You could go look at the Caribbean islands. You could even go look at the tundra and the Arctic. Everywhere there were no white people, there is high levels of biodiversity, apex predators, and the ecosystems were well intact up until the white man came and imposed his system. And if you don't like me saying this, white folks, I can find you your own white people that told on you. I didn't come up with this. Your own white people from your own white institutions told on you. So deal with that internally. I'm just saying, let me see. Hold on. I'm going over to the bookshelf. No, it's not down here. It's upstairs. It's upstairs. There's a 2-volume book called Endgame, Volume 1 and 2 by Derek Jensen. There's several other books if you ain't into reading heavy books. But you read The Long Emergency, really good book called The Long Emergency. So life would thrive if white people or white culture, Western culture, was purged from the face of the earth. And that's why white people, you will not replace us. They know they're not, they are not built for this. They ain't cut out for this. So I don't think we got to get rid of humanity to save life on earth. We just got to get rid of one small minority pathological segment. And like I said, if you think what I'm saying is hate mongering or black man calling for genocide, listen, I can quote you as many white scholars as you like. Oh, here, my lovely assistant. These books right here. Endgame, volume 1 and 2. There you go, Facebook. See that? Derek Jensen. So here's a white man, an engineer, scientifically trained. Oh, he got his picture on the back. I forgot it was there. White. So if I'm saying, he's the one saying we got to bring down Western culture, bring down Western civilization, bring down white. And the world, if we don't, the world would be saved. He said that his culture has a death urge. They kill it all. They're omnicidal. So Carl, stop talking that humanity stuff. You can be more specific. We know who's really killing. They say it's just 100 corporations that are responsible for 72% of all carbon emissions. 100 corporations is killing the planet for not only billions of people, but trillions of other life forms. So we ain't got to, don't talk this humanity extinct stuff. There's room for us. Don't talk that overpopulation stuff. Okay. What do you think about Venezuela dropping the US dollar? Okay, you asked on both forms. Okay. I hope I spoke to that. Oh, Mark, you just had a baby. I gotta send you something, man. Give me an address. I'll send you something for the baby. You gotta raise a revolutionary, man, from day one. But give me a call, Mark, if you want to talk. I raised 2 kids. They all right. They a little out there, but I'm proud of them. But give me a shot. You still got my number, right? I'll send you my new number. Actually, I switched phones. They wouldn't let me transfer my number over. Okay. Well, you in the form of a question. As someone who has raised 2 young men, what advice would you give to anyone wanting to raise a child while navigating the obvious minefields that exist for Black children in the West? Well, growing up, I was mentored by a few revolutionaries where I got to know them. I met some of their children, and it kind of frightened me that you would meet a lot of revolutionaries. I don't want to put anyone on blast, but I will say one revolutionary that I knew personally that was there for my family when my oldest son, was an infant. And he was there and sat with us and spoke with my wife over the phone about our relationship and how we could advance. It was Dale Jones. And Dale Jones' children did not take on his legacy. Another one, Sheikh Anta Diop. There are a lot of revolutionary conscious Black people whose children don't want nothing to do with that Black stuff. And there's some other people I've met whose children don't live up. We all know Malcolm X and his offspring. So I ain't trying to step on no toes. I'm just trying to point out this phenomenon where we have some of our most iconic revolutionaries' children are not even pro-Black, let alone revolutionary. And one thing I decided to do with my children is I read Neely Fuller. I had to stop every time I think of a book. See, most of my books are upstairs, but I have a few down here in the office. But anyway, Neely Fuller, Under Oppression, under the systems and institution of oppression, our children aren't ours. We don't belong to ourselves. So what we have to do is say, how do we nurture a child and raise up a child to be joyous, confident, happy, healthy, and ready to go at our oppressor's neck? How do you raise a little revolutionary? One thing is, I make my lifestyle and environment a revolutionary. I notice a lot of pro-Black people, like when they come home, I don't want to bring the hatred home. I don't want my kids to feel hate. So I've found that you can tell your child about all the realities of the world and let your children dwell among you. My children used to come to meetings. You listen to some of those old, like Professor Mackey lectures, or you might hear some lectures online and you hear a baby crying in the background while Black people are together. That's my kid. That's little Oromo, baby Oromo, crying in the background. So you live a revolutionary life, and it's really a beautiful life. Your children will observe and absorb more than what you tell them. Like, I'll try to tell my son something, boy, this, and that, and he'll tell me or come back at me with something I said to my wife, or he overheard me saying in like one of these type of Q&A sessions. So children absorb from their environment. One thing you have to know, and I'm kind of all over the place because this is a lot, but don't make the mistake of thinking that just because it only took 2 people to procreate, that it only takes 2 people to cultivate. It takes 2 people to procreate. It takes a community to cultivate. It truly takes a village. So make sure you don't just construct a home for your child. You don't just construct a positive home with positive Black imagery, positive Black music, positive Black example of Black love and interactions with your spouse. You need to create a whole community. You need to get around positive Black people everywhere you go. Because a lot of times children will see, like, yeah, my parents are all into the Africa stuff, but that ain't real. They live in a fantasy world. Because everywhere I go, I see Black people that ain't on that. So you got to go to the African festivals, go to the different communities. You might have a Nigerian community. The Aroma in Kansas City, we had Sudanese refugees there. We had Oromo and Eritrean community, an Ethiopian restaurant, and we know the Ethiopian restaurant owner, and he'd come sit at our table and talk to my son and talk to us about his experience. So my son is a product of the Black community, not just a product of his mother and I. And if he goes on to great things, the community gets credit. And if he goes off the rails, the community takes the blame. So it works both ways. But raise your child in a community. Build, if the community doesn't exist, work to construct it. And even if your child see you struggling to do what's right, I always say I'd rather fail at resistance than succeed in submission. So put your child in an environment and relax. Trust in the process. A lot of times your children will guide. I don't really believe in this uniform way. A child must read this, a child must do that, because my sons are very different people. And I interact with one child differently. The standards I have for one child are adjusted for the other child because they are full being. They're full autonomous beings. And the most basic information I give to a parent is be there and be yourself. They're at least half you. They got 23 of your chromosomes. So, whatever you have to give them is what they're there for, because they're a product of you. So be there, be yourself. Don't try to construct this illusions of manhood or this image of manhood or fatherhood. You can be vulnerable, you can be humorous, hell, you can even be devious and deceptive. Play little tricks on them and enjoy life, because those are the real memories. So if you're just doing what's natural and not trying to follow some fixed formula, if your son sees you in the struggle and he sees that's what's valuable, he'll follow on. You won't even have to mandate you're going to fight for the people. It's something he'll want to do on his own, and that's the best thing to do. But a lot of these kids I see raised up to be soldiers from day one by their parents oftentimes get burnt out before they reach puberty. So I hope that helps, man. But call me and we can get into more specifics, because that's a heavy thing and I definitely don't want to lead you wrong. Where do Marxists diverge from ideology from African revolutionaries who were into decolonization? Cabral Fana. Marxists said that the biggest conflict between Marxists, traditional Marxists, and I hope I'm answering your question. You didn't put a question mark there. You know how to use punctuation, Chris. But Marxists say that class supersedes race. And Karl Marx even said that if we properly engage communism or socialism, then not only would racial divisions dissolve, but also along with class, but the state itself would dissolve. And so Black socialists understood, understood, like Garvey said, race is very prominent, and you can't have a socialist racist. Somebody just told me, you can't be socialist and racist. I'm like, that's a good idea. I wish socialism was such a good economic system, and social relations were so pure under socialism that it would totally supersede race. But most of the socialists I've interacted with have been racist. So, you know, I think that was the biggest divergence from African revolutionaries that Marxists tended to. Even though Karl Marx himself, if you read Karl Marx, he did not downplay the significance of race. Karl Marx somewhat acknowledged, I ain't really got the answers for Africans, but he acknowledged that, yeah, Africans gonna have to do some extra shit. They're gonna have to go and beyond what's required of the enslaved and colonized Africans is somewhat a different task for them to get free than the poor, ravaged peasants and working class of Europe. So even Karl Marx acknowledged that race was significant and relevant more so than his followers, who tried to say that race wasn't significant. And Black people were very, very much, they liked communists. Many Black people were very receptive to the communist message because in the United States, in the Jim Crow era, the anarcho-socialists and the communists were some of the first white organizations that openly embraced Black people and welcomed and tried to recruit Black people into their ranks. But then they said, well, we recruit you here, so we don't have to talk about race. We got to talk about class. We got to talk about the means of production. And it's like, yeah, it's fun, and I get to sit next to white folks here, but when I leave the damn meeting hall, I go into a segregated, racially oriented world. So race first. And communists and many established communists and even like the Revolutionary Communist Party of the United States, which I give credit where credit is due. Shout out to Baba Avakian, Sunsara Taylor, Revolutionary Communists doing some good work, getting some good information out there, but they're rather weak on racial analysis. Even though they go throughout the Black community posting revolutionary materials and trying to recruit Black people into revolutionary communism, you don't see them going to Black scholars, Black ideology, or really having a comprehension. They understand Black suffering because they're like, well, capitalism, and they think our suffering is just a byproduct of capitalism, when our suffering predates capitalism. Racism predates capitalism. Racial aggression. The Greeks and the Romans weren't no damn capitalists. They were agrarian, more or more of a plutocracy, but they had racial Roman. They had the same Iceman, Darugu behaviors. So we know we got to be race first. So that's been a big issue between communists telling us that class supersedes race, when we know goddamn well that ain't the case. I haven't read very much Afro-pessimism. I'm sorry to say, it's just not very attractive to me, but maybe I should, because you're not the first person to ask me about it. I'll do some more study of Afro-pessimism. I listened to your show with my son, who seems to be more attentive to your teachings than I anticipated. I appreciate that, Red. And tell your son I said hello. Okay, let's move on. What do you think of Amara Inya? You're trying to get me ran out of town, Jerry. Yeah. Well, hey, man, let me turn down these lights, close the cab, because I'm in Chicago. I'm on the side. I'm in Bronzeville. That's where I live. I can't be talking about Amara Anya. That's like, man, I mean, shit. You better off talking down on Jessie and Farrakhan. She's the new great Black hope. I'll tell you one thing. I had to tell you, I don't understand Amara. When she was running against in 4 years ago, when she first made her first bid to run for mayor, she only raised $600. Which is like, what are you doing? What's this game about? Don't get in the community and get us riled up. It's like a snake oil salesman who rides his little wagon into town and gets everybody all fired up, and then packs up the wagon and heads out of town with our money and our hopes in your bag. Amara Inya has a comprehensive and fairly decent political platform. Her policy agenda is on point. But there's no realistic campaign here. It's more like she's a protest candidate. And I, being a student of public policy and political science, I've always had a disdain for protest candidates. My thing is, if you're going to be a bear, be a grizzly. If you're going to run for mayor or any other office, run to win. Don't run to make a statement. Don't run to increase your profile. Don't run to just bring some issues to the surface on the ballot. Run to occupy office. Run to win or stop playing games. A Black Chicago is too politically vulnerable for these games. And the last thing we need is more candidates. We need a solid platform and a solid means for advancing that platform, that political and policy platform, regardless of who's in office. And I don't vote for politicians. I don't get caught up in that. She's very popular. And I don't know how Kanye and Chance and the Hood all supporting the same damn candidate. That's like the Klan and the Black Panthers and the Nation of Islam all getting behind the same damn person. I mean, she's a beautiful, young, black, educated, black woman, black girl tragic. I'm sorry, black girl magic. But I'm not impressed. Not because I don't think she's astute or even if she's sincere. It's just her execution is problematic. Like I said, you raised $600 in campaign funds in a mayoral election. You playing games. And out of that 600 debt, you got a $70,000 debt simply because you didn't file the right paperwork and you let that shit stand for 4 years. And you got $70,000. What kind of administrator? What kind of team, political team? And then not only do you allow that debt to accumulate, you allow Kanye, MAGA, Superman, Trump hugger, Uncle Tom, slavery was a choice. You publicly take his money. And let me say, maybe you're such an astute politician, you'll take his money and say, and she said something. She said, I don't support Kanye. Kanye supports me. That's like some goddamn doublespeak. Stop playing games with me now. I don't play like that. I don't support Kanye, but Kanye supports me. Based on what? And if you're going to take the 70 G's, and it ain't like the 70 G's even helps your campaign. You just pay off a debt. So you don't even go put that money to phone banking and leafleting. It doesn't advance your effort. So yes, your name is ringing in the streets. Beyond that, what will come of your candidacy? I could be wrong. I'm not part of her inner circle. I had when she first ran for president, everybody was like, "Oh, you should talk to the sister. You should get in the room with the sister." And Green Bean, if you're on here, Seneca was like, "Yeah, you guys really align." Blah blah blah. And I believe Osei, we had a panel discussion, and she was on the. I went to see her give a public talk. Like I said, she's powerful. She looked good, but it's games. We ain't got time for no fucking political games in Chicago. Shit is real out here. So I don't want no decorative, pretty candidate that doesn't have any real fucking interest in winning. Now, I got to get off of here and go pack because I know y'all about to run me off because a lot of people that I work with, that I'm cool with, love this sister. I don't know. Let me just get my tea sip. Ho Chi Minh. What do I think of Ho Chi Minh and his inspiration from Black people in Harlem? I think it's wonderful. And I'm glad that Ho Chi Minh acknowledged that. A lot of Asian revolutionary, a lot of European revolutionaries get inspiration from African revolutionaries and don't acknowledge it. Kwame Ture went as the prime minister of the Black Panther Party. He took a delegation of Black Panthers to Vietnam and met with Ho Chi Minh. And Ho Chi Minh was so excited, he ran to his tent and pulled out his UNIA, his Garvey card, and said, I am a Garveyite. I am, so I appreciate Ho Chi Minh acknowledging, because a lot of people, they don't just take our music. And it's another thing about this whole thing, Black people, with our cultural appropriation. We get so mad when we see a white boy singing R&B and sliding across the stage like Michael Jackson. We get so angry when we see a white boy rapping and busting rhymes and sagging his pants. We get so mad over when white people appropriate our aesthetic culture, our dance, our dress, our lingo. We don't seem to get pissed off when white people appropriate our intellectual and academic culture, which they do all the time. I mean, shit. Me Too has been appropriated. So we don't get mad at that. Our culture is scholarly. Our culture is academic. It's not just about singing and dancing and hooping and hollering. So I appreciate that Ho Chi Minh was able to take Garveyism back to Vietnam and form a revolutionary guerrilla movement to oust the French and later beat the shit out of the Americans. Good up on him, and I'm glad that he acknowledged and told the truth about where his intellectual and operational foundations came from, because many white and Asian revolutionaries don't. They come get our shit, they take it back to their country and swear it came from them and they made it up their damn self. Uh, we boycott black business to try to tap into the white markets too. I'm not sure if that's a question. That's just a comment. Okay, let's see where we are on Facebook. Uh, I haven't seen Sorry to Bother You, man. I was in Oakland and we were doing on this research grant in Oakland. And I thought, how perfect would it be? And every time I was in Wisconsin and I was trying to gear up to go see it in Wisconsin, I was in because I don't go to movies. But I wanted to make a specialist exception to go see this. But I haven't seen Sorry to Bother You. The last time I saw a movie in the theater was Black Panther. But Black Panther, I only went to see Black Panther is because the local state senator was giving out free tickets. So I got free tickets to go to that. But the movie I went to the theaters to see before that was like Children of Men, you know, in the theaters, and that's because I was I was in California again. I was in Los Angeles working, and I had like a whole weekend with nothing to do in Los Angeles. I didn't know anybody, and I damn sure didn't want to go to any of them crazy ass West Coast clubs and shit. So I just went to see a movie in Children of Men, and I was only of like one of two people in the theater. But once I do see Sorry to Bother You, I'll let y'all know because I asked Rifa about it, and he rolled his eyes. So, but we gonna find out. After I saw Mark says I saw the Black Klansman movie and had to sit down with Spike Lee after the film. Exactly like you say, some bullshit. It was an apologist movie for cops. Yeah, you know, I got a cousin who actually has a role in Chirac. I haven't seen Chirac either. Yeah, I ain't been rocking with Spike Lee for a while. I used to call him Spook Lee. I don't call him that no more. I might have to go back to that. What do you think the next stage of capitalism will look like as the world becomes more depleted of natural resources? Well, I think the capitalists are now going to the fortress stage. What they're doing is with this gated community, they're going to build small capitalist enclaves where they reserve the technology, the life extension technology. They're starting to build these vertical farms where they don't need land to build. They can build up. They're starting to automate and get robots for everything. So what the capitalists intend to do, the wealthy, is to create these enclaves in the hill, in the mountaintop in Chile, and an underground bunker in Washington D.C. and the Colorado mountains and sub-Saharan African enclaves of wealth and affluence. And they will get on their private jets and fly between these wealthy enclaves, or what they call fortress cities, like Chicago, and you notice where black people are getting pushed out of the urban cores, and they're going to build up military forces, and they'll live in these capitalist, post-carbon, renewable energy, vertical farm, and UV light farm enclaves. This is what they're attempting to do. I'm not saying it will succeed, and then the rest of us will live in the desiccated, desertified areas, scraping by. And every now and then, will some poor person outside of the capitalist class will be brilliant enough to be allowed into the walls to be an engineer or a worker. So that's what it looks like it's going back. It's going back to the early stages of feudal Europe, where the peasants, the working class, will be on the brink of starvation and constant warfare and conflict, while they sit up in their solar-powered, wind-powered, technological castles with high walls and automated drones and machine guns to kill us if we try to rush the walls. That's where they're going with this shit after the depletion of natural resources. They're just going to fortress it all and continue to rape the world. Sick motherfuckers. I hate capitalists. And the only thing I hate more than capitalists are the pseudo wannabe striving to be capitalists. You know, to me, a black person or a poor person that's working to be a capitalist is like a cow that's training to be a butcher. Where do I get my political news from? Everywhere. I watch Democracy Now!, Global Research News Hour, the New York Times, believe it or not. I kind of pick up information where it is, and in a lot of places, even Amy Goodman be on some bullshit. I wish Black Agenda Report. I wish I could say, well, this is the source of accurate news. What you have to do is finely tune your bullshit detector, because no matter how progressive, how liberal, or even how radical, the Burning Spear newspaper, the Final Call newspaper, no matter how radical pro-black a media or news outlet is bound to be some bullshit. Hell, even I make mistakes. Maybe it's not bullshit. Maybe it's mistakes. I remember one time on the Bro.Diallo show, I said that Harriet Tubman sat on the bus or something. I was meaning to say Rosa Parks, but I was talking about Harriet Tubman and the $20 bill, and I guess I had Harriet Tubman on the brain, and I shoot the show early in the morning. I have to get up at 5 to get to the studio by 7 and show prep, and I have a lot of shit on my mind, a lot of stuff. So when I do the show, sometimes I have a mistake. So one time I was trying to say Harriet Tubman, I was trying to say Rosa Parks, and I said Harriet Tubman. I went back and listened to the show, like, damn, that's wrong as hell. So I get my news from several different media and news outlet, online and print sources, and other media sources. But I can't really say that there's anyone that I've ever been like totally satisfied with. It's kind of like a ad hoc gumbo of news sources. Uh, oh, no problem, Tony. He said thanks for answering his question. Thimba, do you think Africa and African people are at war? Thimba asked, yes, African people are at war. We've been in a perpetual state of war. We're not just in military war, we are in cultural, psychological, spiritual war. We are in a total war, absolute warfare, and perpetual warfare. And even when we're at so called peace with our enemies define peace as a time to prepare for war. They declare peace or surrender only to buy themselves enough time to build up the armaments to come back and fight the war even more effectively. So, yes, we are at war. Africa, Africans at home and abroad, the African diasporas, and our brothers and sisters on the continent, we are at war. You know, and if you're married to a non-white person, then that's just called, y'all can huddle up in bed. But when y'all get up, put on your armor, because y'all are at war too. I'm sorry to say. I wish it didn't have to be. I don't like war. I don't fantasize about war. I'm not one of them cats that's into fighting and banging. But I mean, I was born into this shit. And so we can bring peace, but we have to defeat our enemies to get to peace. We don't have to kill once we overpower them. I agree, yeah. Uh, uh, what are some good movies? One good movie is an animated movie called Spirit, Stallion of the Cimarron. Kirikou and the Sorceress is a good movie. Of course, Spookoo Set by the Door. Another movie about a African warrior priestess called Sarah Unya. Sankofa is not the best, but Sankofa is a decent movie. Farewell, Uncle Tom is a good mockumentary. It's outrageous and it's painful to watch, but I think it's historically accurate. That's a good movie. What else? I know as soon as I get offline, I'm gonna think of dozens because there are some good movies out there for that are entertaining and educational. Chameleon Street is a really, really good movie, especially if you watch the movie Chameleon Street in conjunction with Disciplined Minds and Disciplined Minds. Chameleon Street is a good and politically astute movie if you watch it from the right perspective, and it's also very entertaining. Chameleon Street is where Most Def and Talib got that. Even my conditioning has been conditions. I'm a victim, brother. That's where that comes from. Chameleon Street. That is an excellent movie. The Education of Sonny Carson. The acting isn't very good, but it's up there. I have respect for Sonny Carson. I wish the movie had done him more better service. I hate to say this, but I think X by Spike Lee um, it's not really accurate. There's so many inaccuracies in there, but actually there are inaccuracies in the autobiography of Malcolm X as well. But again, for considering all the muddia bullshit out there, I mean, you gotta get in where you fit in. So, but definitely see Sarah Unya. You gotta see Sarah Unya. Same thing with Shaka Zulu. That's British propaganda, is colonial propaganda, but there are some good things to be gleaned from there. But can you talk about what that looks like? I'm not sure what you're referring to, Felicia. Uh, yeah, I'll send you my new number, Mark. I'm a little bit behind. Y'all a little bit ahead of me. I have to scroll down to get the questions because when I answer a question, other stuff comes in. So y'all a little ahead of me. Carl, Guns, Germs, and Steel by Jared Diamond. What's your opinion on that book? Fuck Jared Diamond. Jared Diamond in that book. See, I'm gonna see if it's down here. No, it's upstairs. On one show, y'all was asking me every time y'all asked me a question, the book that I wanted to reference was down here. Maybe I should start shooting the stove upstairs because that's where most of my books are. But Jared Diamond, it's a good book from a technical. Like if you're into history and you like, because one part of history is the technical aspect of history, getting the facts, getting the documents and the facts and the occurrences and the timeline, getting all the technical aspects. Jared Diamond's good at that shit. But what I don't like this motherfucker is where the analysis of the facts. Because something will happen in history. Let's take the Aztecs and their ritual sacrifice. That's a historical fact. The ritual sacrifice in Aztec culture is a fact. Now, what do I think about it? Is it moral? Is it amoral? If I want to talk about their motivations and the impacts, a lot of that can be subjective. So Jared Diamond basically said white people took over the world because they didn't know any better. It was an accident. It was inevitable. And if it wasn't the white man who took over the world and killed off all these people and colonized, then the Asians would have done it or the Africans would have done it. So he distorts that shit. But other than that, it's a good book. But fuck him. But read the book. But fuck him on top of that. That's why anytime you get any information, your African, your Pan-African conscious filter has to be on. And that's why you got to read from a variety. So you got to read Jared Diamond, but you also got to read Chancellor Williams. In fact, before you read Jared Diamond, Guns, Germs, and Steel, and about European conquest, read The Destruction of African Civilization so when you get those books together, then you can weed out and filter out the bullshit. And a lot of times the things that is said by a black man, since black people don't have validity unless we come through white standards, you can get a lot of what Chancellor Williams said is validated. So, but other than that, I like the book Guns, Germs, and Steel. It's very accessible. I like when these academics write in such a way that the commoners like us can read. But fuck him for some of the shit he said. Uh, I really appreciate Wade B. Nobles. Wade B. Nobles is really good in terms of understanding because up until people like Wade B. Nobles and Marimba Ani started getting those PhDs in psychology and doing that work, psychology was all about getting black people to cope with our circumstances. It's about uh, defining normalcy as being able to accept reality as it is. If you could not come to terms with the status quo, then you had to work with them so that they can accept the status quo. Stop being angry, stop with your frustration, stop with your despair, and go to school, go to work, achieve what you can, sacrifice, save up, increase your credit score, buy some property, rent it out, become a slumlord, and be a normal person. So people like Wade B. Nobles and other conscious psychologists who understood that the black mind does not function, is not constructed, and does not function like the European mind, they started bringing out saying that the trauma of our ancestors gets passed down generationally. It's not something we can get away from. It's something we have to go through, not run from. So I greatly appreciate Wade B. Noble's work. Um, in terms of I don't fully agree that it's saying a lot of times, I don't know if he says this directly. It's been some time since I've read him that, speaking our native African languages and wearing our native African garb and engaging in our native African rituals unto itself will liberate us. But if doing that did liberate us, we were all speaking African languages, worshiping African gods, engaged in African rituals, and interacting in social African standards when the Arabs and the whites came and blew our shit up. So obviously there is some flaws within our culture. So I'm not about going back to Africa. I'm interested in advancing forward. I don't think that we have to be subject to the past. I support Sankofa. You have to look back in order to move forward, but I'm not for replication of African antiquity. A lot of people, a lot of Afrocentrics, especially from the 80s, are very much into recreating Africa's past. I'm for constructing a brand new Africa for the future based on the information we have now that our ancestors didn't have and the experience we've gone through that our ancestors didn't. So there is a lot of value to be gleaned from our African, but I don't think we need to recreate it in whole. So that's one of my issues with the modern Afrocentric movement from Molefe Asante and the Way Be Nobles. They wear African garb, they speak African languages, but I think I'm not saying modernize. I think we have to revolutionize African culture because Africans cultivated that culture in a time of stability and peace, which we don't have. I think if Imhotep was alive today, I don't think he'd be building pyramids. He'd probably be building bunkers underground instead of large pyramids above ground. So we can still use our brilliance in a revolutionary context. We must. It's do or die. I hope that speaks to your question because there's so much content there. Man, I might have to just take one question for 2 hours because I hate. But y'all tell me how y'all want to do this. We can do it one question for the whole show, or I can try to just give what I feel like a lot of times inadequate answers. We'll see. Hi, Diallo. What do you think? Tito says, what do you think about Steven Pinker's analysis that war and violence in this modern era has been greatly declining? I think he's on some bullshit. I think he's on some bullshit, and I'm actually very familiar with what he's saying. Oh, a man of past, and that's some white cracker shit that they talk about. Oh, before man was in, that's like Hobbesian analysis. Before the modern ruler, man was engaged in warfare, and there was all these warring tribes, and man was much more violent in the past than now. That's some bullshit. And one of the reasons why we're able to have the illusion that the man is more peaceful and there's less war today is because the United States has been in 15 years in perpetual war with Afghanistan and Iraq and genocidal warfares, deaths of millions of people. But remember, during World War I and World War II, they started rationing rubbers and rationing pantyhose, and you could only buy so many tires a year and all this stuff. So in the past, whole societies went to war. When America went to war, the war was felt on the home front, even if there weren't bombs dropping here. You go to the grocery store and you come with your quota card. And the grocery store manager say, well, you can't buy any lard today because you reached your lard quota last week. So you won't be able to buy lard until next because you got to support the war effort and build a victory garden. And everybody went off to the war factory. But now the war industry has been able to separate and rise from it. So we don't see missiles being driven down the street. We don't see often every day military helicopters. We don't have to make personal sacrifices. So there's a bombing raid in Afghanistan tomorrow, and I don't go to the store and find out there's materials that weren't there. So we can have the illusion as people in the modern world or in the Western world or in the first world that, we're so much more peaceful today than it was in the past. But no, it's not. And Europeans like to project. They talk this shit where Europe was perpetual warfare, everybody against everybody. Like I said, you got to read Hobbes. You got to read the European political philosophical canon to understand the mind state. Read for it. And they were like, well, if white people do it, then it's mankind. They project themselves across the world. So if Europe is a place of perpetual warfare, then Earth is a place of perpetual warfare. If Europeans are engaged in perpetual warfare, then mankind is engaged in perpetual warfare. I do not believe and I do not accept his analysis that the world is becoming more peaceful and that humans are engaged in less conflict and less warfare than our so-called primitive ancestors. That's some bullshit, and it's not held up when you study African antiquity or even Asian and New World or Native American cultures and society. So no, take that's some crack of shit. Uh, moving on. See, Reefa, I'm glad you said you didn't like. Sorry to bother you. I didn't know if I was telling something you didn't want to be said. Yes, yeah, like dystopia, Carl. I don't know what the 3% is. Yeah, yeah. Amy Goodman be on some bullshit. She be on some bullshit, but then that's some good, and she has some good guests, and taking what we giving, man. We gotta get in where we fit in. Like I said, walk it like we talk it. What's up, Jay? Oh, the Battle of Algiers. Thank you, Jay. Yeah, that's another movie. Good as fuck. Battle of Algiers. I'm just cursing just to be cursing because I can't curse. Oh, and on my radio show, so I just might just throw random shit. Don't think if it don't fit. Just I'm just trying to take advantage of not being able to curse when I'm on the broadcasting on the radio. He just got back from Cuba. He wants all black people to go to Cuba. You got all black people go to Cuba money, Jay? But no, shout out Cuba. Uh, I like the way you answer many questions. Hard to do, but touches so many aspects. Exhausting for you though. Yeah, I appreciate you appreciating me, Jerry. What's up, Ahmad Washington? Warrior Scholars. Now I got scholars watching me now, so now I gotta even be more. Let me button my shirt up. I gotta be more accurate. Okay. How other groups got reparations, but when you presented it to an organization, they didn't like it. What do you suggest? How other groups got reparations, but when you presented it to an organization, I'm not sure what I can do with that. How other groups got reparations. Let me tell you what black people don't understand. Reparations ain't got a motherfucking thing to do with morality. Reparations got no motherfucking thing to do with correcting past wrongs. Black people are fighting for reparations and think we should get reparations because we deserve reparations and we are worthy of reparations. And no people who ever received reparations ever got it because it was right or they deserved it. Now, the people who do get reparations are people who organize themselves and put themselves in a position to sanction those who owe them reparations. People pay reparations when the penalty for not paying reparations is greater than the loss they will receive after paying reparations. Or that's one way to get reparations. Give me my motherfucking reparations. I'm gonna kill your fucking ass. That's one way. Another way to get reparations is say, give me reparations, and I'll do it. I'll take those reparation resources and provide you a service above and beyond the amount of revenues that you give me for the reparations. That's how you get reparations. It's not that hard. Germany paid reparations to Great Britain, France, and the other allied powers. Because the allied power says, listen, you bombed us, you attacked us, you invaded us, and if you don't pay us reparations, we're going to kill you. So Germany had to pay war reparations. Go look up the Treaty of Versailles. They didn't pay it because they loved Europe, because they felt bad for what they did. They paid it because they would get killed if they didn't. The Jews get reparations, not because Germany feels guilty or any other nation feels bad for what happened to the Jews. The Jews get reparations because they said, listen, the wealth of the world is located in the Middle East, and the European nations don't have a bag, man. They don't have a stake there. You let us set up an enclave, a colonial settler colony in Europe, and we will do your dirty work and allow you to go to the United Nations and be the righteous human rights nation, and we'll do all the dirty work. Just break us off a little something, let us get some land, let us deal with the Palestinians any kind of way and murder and genocide them, and we will provide service to you. And we will use the Mossad and the IDF to carry out any of your stuff and allow you to keep your hands clean. And U.S., Great Britain, France were like, man, that's a good deal. We do need somebody in the Middle East, and we don't want stability. We want to keep Iran, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Egypt. We want to keep the Islamic world off tilter. We don't want them to stabilize, because if they stabilize and they were able to build real democracies, then they could start charging us market rates for the oil. And if they charge us market rate for the oils and the resources and other natural minerals, if we had to pay market rates for it, then we wouldn't have billionaires and white people marching around the world, and multinational corporations. So Israel got reparations because Israel said the services that I will provide you will be above and beyond. So what are we going to do, black people? Do we say, well, we are black people, you give black people reparations, then we will be we will legitimize America. We will give America the black stamp of approval. And we'll go to Africa, the Caribbean, and Latin America and tell them how good America is, how good America treats us. And you should open up your markets, open up your minds, open up everything, open up your water reserves and your wildlife reserves and your forests, and allow America to come in, because America sure loves black people because they gave us reparations. And that's proof that America is a good nation that you should trust. That's one thing. That's what a lot of black people try to do. That's what Yvette wants to do. Sell her services to the government for reparations. Or we can get in a position saying, listen, we've organized several revolutionary cadres all over the world, and we could subvert American interest, America economic, military interests all over the world. We have identified all the choke points within your imperial system. And yeah, you got aircraft carriers, but we have mastered guerrilla asymmetric warfare, and we can blow all your shit and disrupt all your shit, and we can tank the stock market like that. We can tank the commodities market like that. Fuck with us. And we can call a general strike, and we have so much unity and coordination with black people. If we tell every black man to stay home from work tomorrow, every black man will stay home from work. Give us our reparations. And the white man were like, oh, who do I fill this check out to? It ain't got shit to do with right or wrong. Reparations is about power. And there's a lot of black people asking for reparations, but ain't organizing for power. When I was working within Cobra, that's what I said. What is our ask, and what is the consequences for saying no, and what is the reward for saying yes? Because that's what the white man says to him. What, nigga? Who's at the door? It's niggas. What do y'all want, niggas? We want reparations. Well, what happens if I say yes? We'll love you. What happens if I say no? We'll stand out here in the cold and keep asking you. Okay. I don't want you. I'd rather have my $1 trillion than your love. So stay out there and keep asking. I don't know why we playing this game. Why can't we be grown folks about this reparations shit? We run into the Hague and the UN. All you got to do is look at the people who got reparations and the people who didn't get reparations, and what did these people do that these people didn't do? And both groups are worthy. All people get reparations generally deserve something. They were done some magnificent wrong. But being done wrong does not gonna win you reparations. I don't care. And we keep coming up with these documents. Oh, these corporations, these universities, this government official, this family, they all took money and they all benefited from slavery. They don't give a fuck. Don't get me started on reparations. Black people, man, what's this game about? We play to play, we don't play to win. And we on some emotional shit. I'm sorry, Bro.Diallo, the message came through, split up. I don't know. Anyway, that's all I could speak to on reparations. What's my time look like? My time is wrapping up. Oh, sorry. I hope the DOS talking about they pro reparations. They just trying to get a payoff for services rendered. I can split up and fractionalize the black community. I can re-break those ties. Since black people were first brought here, they have always been afraid with the African diaspora winking with the African continent. So Yvette might get reparations because that DOS movement is providing a vital service to the systems and institutions of white domination. She ain't going to get secure reparations because she did something right or because she identified a wrong. She'll get reparations because Yvette, if I was a white supremacist, I would love the DOS movement. I mean, just imagine if white people in America started to break all their cultural, economic, military ties with Europe. You know how much weaker if the US? That's why they mad at Trump now. Trump is like, you fucking with the UN, you fucking with NATO, you fucking with our money, you fucking with our solidarity. We don't love each other, but we still need these structural ties to pimp the world. And as the white people are internationalizing and globalizing their shit, you're trying to isolate a small segment of the global black community, a little funky 6%. You're a little funky 6% of black people in a little corner of the world. Fucking idiot. I guess y'all stop asking me questions. I don't mean to get. Hold on, let me recenter. Allow me to realign my chakras. Where's my gong? I hear something with myself. No, there's no vibration. I don't have my gong. Allow me to recenter. Let me go get a sage wand. Where we at, y'all? I gotta wrap this up anyway. It's been real. I'm sorry about the lighting. I know my eyes look dark. I tried to get the lighting together, but I ain't with all this full theatrics. Anyway, next week it might be better. Next week the lighting might be better. I always feel like, I appreciate it. I do have a question. I have to find out who the hell Eric Reed and Malcolm Jenkins are in the NFL shit. Man, y'all be asking me if y'all want to just see me stumble, get on here and ask me sports questions. You can ask me about historical issues, sports, because I'm reading $40 Million Slave, so I'm up on shit that ball chasing from 50, 60 years ago. It's just modern ball chasing, man. I know Kaepernick got an afro. That's all I know about modern sports. I know LeBron went to LA. I know the World Series was just won by the racist ass Boston Red Sox. Fuck them. But Boston is racist. Not Wilt Chamberlain. Bill Russell. He said when he played for the Celtics, he said, I don't play for Boston. I play for the Celtics. Fuck Boston. It's racist. I thought that was cool. A study on what subject? Reparations? I can get back to you on that. A book on, Randall, what's his name? Randall Robinson. The Debt. That's a good book on reparations. Thank you, K Spoon. I'll keep doing me. And if I miss y'all in the feed, because I'll be answering a question and then, questions will come in, so I'll miss some of the guys. I'm not trying to ignore anybody. Wasn't Tupac murdered by the government due to his family background? I thought Tupac was killed because he stomped out a gangbanger. I really don't. My wife is. I should get her in here to talk about the Tupac conspiracy. She's actually done quite a bit of research on Tupac. I was in the Biggie camp. BIG, POPPA, no info for the DEA, federal agent is mad because I'm flagrant. So I was in the Biggie camp. I just wasn't back in the 90s. I actually met Tupac when he was arrested at Rikers Island. So fairly small. Well, I'm 6'3", but he was like a tiny dude. And he was very indignant. He was Island Infirmary. He came in there for a chest x-ray. And the white female tech was going to take his x-ray. And he said, I don't want this white bitch taking my x-ray. She's being rude. Get her the fuck out of here. And of course, they brought in another tech. And I'm like, ooh, I can do it. And they were like, nah, you starstruck. So they sent in one of the older techs who didn't know who he was to do the x-ray. I met Flavor Flav, too. Met Flavor Flav at Rikers Island. Doubt he remembers. He probably smoked that memory out. But I did meet Tupac, small guy. But my wife knows a lot about, the conditions surrounding his death. But, he was a fake gangstering and shit. But I know a lot of black youth who were shot, talented black youth who were shot. And then, he should have listened to NY Love. He should have listened to King's Son. He said the whole point of being a criminal is getting paid. You paid already, acting crazy like Eddie. Fuck a thug life. Niggas die beyond unlawful. You let that peer pressure stress you something awful. With the world in your hand, fuck a man, be a king. You ain't even a man because you under the ring. Helter skelter from the shut. If you listen to NY Love by King's Son, it's a diss track against Tupac. And if Tupac had followed the advice in that song, he'd be right here. He'd be in Vegas performing, opening up for Britney Spears. I think the best thing that happened to his career is him getting killed. I think he would have just rapped into his purity. He'd be co-hosting a cooking show with Martha Stewart like Snoop Dogg. But y'all love Tupac. I don't want to take him away from y'all. I question all this stuff he was planning on doing, but my wife, she really believes he was boiling up something. He was about to unite the gangs and overthrow the government. I don't know. I know he wasn't a better MC than Biggie. That's all I know about. Uh, I did speak on reparations. I hope if you can go back, if you missed my rant on reparations, I'm calm again, so I can't speak on reparations. I don't want to get worked up again. It's almost time for me to go to bed. You speak. Uh, yeah, I did do a whole show on reparations. I believe I did. Yeah, my wife is smart. Even white folks believe she's smart. They gave her a doctorate. I don't need no doctorate. She's a sellout. I ain't. Groups of reparations suggest. Are we good, y'all? All right. I hope you didn't just get in, Cynthia. Shout out, because we about to wrap it up. Yeah, it's 9 o'clock. Time to go to my theme music. I love my theme just to having this. Here we go. All right. I was calling it episode, but I think I'm gonna start calling it sessions. These are more like sessions than episodes. So thank you for tuning in for episode 4 of Monday Q&A with Bro.Diallo. I really enjoy doing this. And I appreciate y'all taking the time to listen. How can you do Facebook Live for free? I don't just go click Facebook Live. But I'm tuning out, and yeah, hell yeah. Y'all want me to start it? Yeah, maybe I'll do a freestyle session. But anyway, I appreciate y'all listening. I'm signing off. Shout out to everybody that tuned in. Feel free to share the show. Feel free to continue the discussion in my absence. And I will see y'all Wednesday. I'm moving from AM to FM, so I'm going to have a wider reach here in Chicago. Bro.Diallo show. The website will be up. And we're doing having some vegan Halloween for the children. If you're on the south side of Chicago, holla at me. We get some vegan, non-GMO, organic candy for the babies. I'll see y'all later. Peace. How